Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Retro, and in this video we're going to take a look at my top 10 favorite Nintendo Game Boy games. I remember it as if it was yesterday when I got my original gray Game Boy. The holiday season of 1993 is when I got this baby, and I played it so much that my original copy doesn't work anymore. All the screen lines are broken, it's just done. That's how much I played it. So these are my top 10 personal favorite Game Boy games. If you have any comments or remarks on your top 10, feel free to reply on YouTube or on facebook.com/drretromd. So let's get to number 10.
The number 10 is the only game in this list that I didn't play as a kid, but that I got to know after I started collecting. Gargoyles Quest is a challenging action platformer that has some innovative gameplay elements, such as your ability to stick to walls and hover in the air for a short period of time. The graphics, sound effects and music in this game are all top notch. The only thing that could turn you off from playing this gem is the difficulty level, which is quite high right from the start. Gargoyles Quest is a no-nonsense game. It grabs you by the throat and it doesn't let go. Gradius is one of the shoot-em-ups that helped shape and popularize the genre. Together with Xenon 2 on the PC, it was my first dabble in a world where furious shooting and pixel-perfect coordination are your only chances on survival. This game is not just fast reflexes and pattern memorization, but there is also a degree of strategy with deciding what power-ups you will pick for your ship. Add to that screen-filling alien bosses and you have yourself a Game Boy classic. My pick for number 8 might be a bit controversial, but this one is all about nostalgia. As a kid I was crazy about the Mortal Kombat games, and it meant the world to me when I got to borrow a copy of Mortal Kombat 2 from my cousin. In those 2 weeks I spent every spare second I had with this game, trying to pull off all the fatalities and tricks. Gameplay wise it's a poor version of the original, but I loved it as a kid and that's why it deserves this spot. My next childhood hero is a well-known icon in most of Europe, but is fairly unknown in the rest of the world. Asterix is the main protagonist from a long-running series of comic books, movies and video games, and this is his first adventure on the Game Boy. Asterix is a fun and challenging platformer that has a lot to offer. First of all, it has a great soundtrack and some really good sound effects. Gameplay-wise, it has a good difficulty curve without ever getting ridiculous, and the best thing is that this game is filled with secret rooms and bonus levels. All in all, Asterix is a platforming gem that should be in every Game Boy collection. Mega Man 2 is the best action platformer ever made, but it didn't end up as my number 1 in this list, as it did in my top 10 NES games. The reason for this is that my top 10 Game Boy games is all about nostalgia, and there are just 5 other games that are more dear to me than Mega Man 2. As for this second adventure of the Blue Bomber, it's pretty much perfect. It has one of the best soundtracks in video game history, the gameplay is legendary and the boss fights are memorable. This Game Boy version is not a straight port from the NES version, which makes it even more important to own this game on both platforms. An unwritten rule in review land is that you can only pick one game of a series in the top 10. But with this video I'm bending the rules a bit, because my number 5 is officially called Super Mario Land 3. Since it's the breakthrough of Mario's second biggest enemy of all time, and the fact that Mario himself isn't anywhere in this game, I just call it Wario Land. This game has 2 unique points that make me come back to it time and time again. The first one being the diversity of the gameplay. Not only do 3 power-up helmets give you different ways to complete the levels, there are also parts where your normal and weakened state are more preferable. The second and most important thing that makes Wario Land such an addicting game is the amount of secrets that are hidden throughout the levels. If you have the right power-up at the right time, you can reach hidden spots and find hidden treasures you couldn't reach otherwise. A thing that blew me away as a kid is the fact that levels change depending on your progression. Treasures that you couldn't find in your first run become obtainable after the level has been flooded, and this flood happened because you unclogged a river in a later zone. Combine this extreme level of dedication to making a captivating experience with great graphics and sound, and you have one of my favorite games of all time. At first sight, Looney Tunes is your run-of-the-mill cartoon-based game focused at the younger audience. And that first impression is pretty accurate, but that doesn't mean it isn't one of the best platformers that I played on my beloved Great Brick. Every level of this game centers around a different Looney Tunes character and has a different style of gameplay. You have the platforming levels with Daffy Duck, Speedy Gonzales and Bugs Bunny, there's a shoot 'em up level with Porky Pig, speed-based levels with Roadrunner and Tweety, and as a cherry on the cake you have a bonus level with the Tasmanian Devil. Because I considered the Wario Land games a separate series, it wasn't too difficult for me to pick my favorite game from the Super Mario Land series. In this game, it's Mario's quest to travel to 6 different zones and acquire the 6 golden coins. After obtaining these coins, you enter the final castle and meet the end boss, which is Wario. In the final fight you have to beat him 3 times with increasing difficulty, and trust me, as a kid that fight scared me. But before you got to Wario you had to clear 6 very different zones, and each one was ending with a final boss guarding the coin. The gameplay between the zones differs a lot. You have your obligatory water area, but there's also a space zone, a haunted house, a micro world and more. Mario Land 2 was a huge step forward for platforming on the Game Boy, especially if you compare it to the first Super Mario Land game. After my number 1 in this list, this is the game that took up most of my battery time in the 90s. The runner-up in this top 10 is my favorite pink blob. Not that I know many other pink blobs, but still, Kirby is one kick-ass vacuuming balloon and his first game on the Game Boy was an instant classic. Even though this game doesn't have the feature to take over an enemy's power or the minigames, which both made the NES game legendary, it's still, in my opinion, the second best Game Boy game ever. As with every Kirby game, the difficulty level isn't very high, but its charming graphics and mesmerizing music will win you over. The gameplay is rock solid. Kirby jumps, floats, flies, sucks and spits his way through 5 zones before facing his final enemy, King Dedede. I loved this game so much as a kid that I spent hours and hours trying to find out hidden passages and secrets. Can you imagine the joy that I felt when I discovered a hidden bonus zone after spending a day pressing up at every possible pixel? That feeling is what makes Kirby's Dreamland so important to me that it deserves the number 2 spot in this top 10. What other game than Pokemon could be my number 1 Game Boy game? This game is a phenomenon. It created an unprecedented flood of games, cartoons, movies, toys and any type of merchandise you can possibly think of. In Pokemon you embark on an adventure of epic proportions with a growing set of pocket monsters that you'll come to love. It was pure marketing genius to release this game in 2 different versions, making it necessary for you to trade with others or to buy both games if you wanted to complete your Pokédex. I didn't just play this game, I lived this game. Catching Mewtwo with a Pokeball is still my greatest gaming accomplishment ever, and I'm proud of that. Pokemon deserves this number 1 spot more than any other game, and I even dare say it's the best handheld game ever made.